So it started innocently enough. I follow a few visual artists on Instagram, and I realized I wanted the opportunity to have some interesting and inspiring conversations with some people. So I reached out to a few artists, and I was going to do a 3 or maybe 5 part series, but my curiosity got the better of me, and that turned into a few more. So the earliest evidence of recognizable human art is 40,000 years old. The earliest evidence of human agriculture, by contrast, is only 10,000 years old, which means that somewhere in our collective evolutionary story, we decided that it was way more important to make attractive, superfluous items than it was to regularly feed ourselves. So today I'm going to share with you my creative process of studying others' creative processes. Intersection is an 18-episode audio series featuring conversations with female artists spanning 5 countries to really understand what unites us in a multidisciplinary world. I launched it through my podcast starting in November. And as I began to get deeper into the project, I was kept awake many nights, simultaneously fascinated and flummoxed by how to connect the artists I was speaking to. And the entire process became this huge puzzle that consisted of 17 artists, 9 hours of audio, and a blank screen in front of me, ready to transform it into a visual story. So this series was unlike any other I'd ever produced because I typically get an idea and I run with it, full stop. Like a sleek, trendy, high-speed train traveling on the most efficient, direct route from start to finish, my process is usually pretty whirlwind and exciting. However, the process of creating Intersection was kind of like riding this train because it stopped at every station. It was this weird train that took months to get from starting point to its destination. The tracks, they were non-linear, they were curving, they were circling back on themselves. And I drifted into interesting places I did not originally intend on doing so. But I'm so grateful for having experienced this slower, more complex, unconventional train because it allowed me to peel back the layers of conversation I was having. Kind of like an onion, but less smelly, of course. And it was creatively allowing me to shift and grow and think differently. So, looking at the big picture of all of the artists I spoke with, here are some of the most interesting and overarching commonalities. Most, if not all of these artists are multidisciplinary. So they specialize in 1 or 2 crafts, but they dabble in many, many others. And many of these women are also creative leaders in their communities. Competition was rarely discussed. Now, throughout the 17 conversations, strong connections emerged, a web of wisdom born out of nodes of knowledge. So uncovering the points of intersection to connect each artist to the next, to the next, to the next became the creative constraint that I finally chose to work within. So there are the individual stories and then the stories between the stories. So my creative process involved collection and dissection and reflection and finding connection and ultimately intersection of these 17 female artists. And I have the spreadsheet to prove it. And then I represented them visually through a series of overlapping circles that spoke to the interwoven relationships between these creatives. So here they are. Here are the artists. Starting with episode 77, Growth connects me to realist painter Brooke Cormier, whose acceptance of failure connects her to Photoshop artist Inger Christine Steinsland, who believes that the journey is the destination, which connects her to art therapist Amelia Hutchison, whose belief that her art is also her therapy connects her to makeup artist Billy Rose Ledoux, who creates safe spaces through her art, connecting her to abstract artist Sarika Unique, who uses bright colors, connecting her to textile designer Caroline Duffy, who is inspired by nature, connecting her to animator Shen Ramu, who recognizes the importance of setting boundaries, connecting her to portraiture artist Kate McLean, whose approach to traditional meets modern connects her to bridal henna artist Sana Riazali Merchant, whose art form involves storytelling, connects her to tattoo artist Allison Zoe, whose research practice connects her to filmmaker Lillian Chan, whose views on creative control connect her to photographer Sarah Wright, who desires multiple creative paths, which connects her to paper cut artist Sarah Dennis, whose incorporation of play connects her to Lego artist Kate Hunter, whose work on meaningful projects connects her to digital paper cut artist Erin Sass, whose stance on the importance of creative flow connects her to watercolor artist Catherine Clemitis, whose overcoming of obstacles connects her to woodworker Babette the Builder, who is connected back to me, coming full circle in the spontaneity we share in our creative process. It was a lot. But what I did from a technical perspective is I laid out all of the visuals on a grid, side by side, using 18 artboards in Adobe Illustrator. This allowed me to break them apart and then display them on Instagram, kind of piecing them all back together in one giant map when the episodes were released. So on the left is that nearly completed map, and on the right is an example of a single post. Now, I also wanted to visually represent the way that the artists were similar and dissimilar from one another. So linearity of the artist's creative process was really one way. Non-linear, each new project brings a new process, or linear, the artist's process being nearly identical every single time. I also mapped out the analog and digital nature of the tools that they used in their craft. So analog being art supplies, pen and paper, knives, woodworking tools, makeup, henna paste, tattooing guns, and digital being cameras, digital editing tools, animation software, apps like Procreate. And then finally, a grid with 4 quadrants as to where the artists draw their inspiration. So digital, on a screen, analog, outside of a screen, human, other artists and people, or non-human, nature, architecture, objects. And one of my absolute favorite truisms that I feel deeply and often is that curiosity plus constraint equals creativity. So this podcast series for me was kind of a perfect realization of this idea. Curiosity drew me into each new conversation, and constraint challenged me to listen below surface level and visually map out each intersection. Thank you.